Hello Internet, Dyce Quirk here, and today I want to say congratulations. If you're watching this video, you more than likely were selected by JET to come in for an interview. And if you weren't selected, or you're just not sure yet, still, kudos to you, because you're taking that extra step to help prep yourself so that you have the best chances possible of being selected if you go in for an interview. Now, in this video, I want to try to prep you as best as I possibly can for the interview process by giving you 10 awesome tips that really helped me when I was in the interview process. Because I remember scouring the internet looking for anything I could use to help prep me for it. It was full of a lot of anxiety waiting for it to happen, but ultimately, it all paid off when I was accepted into the 2020 JET program. So let's not waste time and let's get to it. Tip number 1, make a list of practice questions. Now, I don't know if I can personally tell you exactly what I was asked during my interview. Yeah, totally censored. But you can find tons of lists of different questions that they'll ask during the JET interview online. And I would just take a lot of those questions, put them into one document, and if you happen to find a list that has pre-made answers, I would just not use them. In fact, get rid of the answers and then make answers for yourself. Tip number 2. Look over your SOP and your application and make questions from those documents. Now, honestly, this should be a tip all in itself, but if they invited you in for an interview, that means they love your application. They think that you are perfect on paper for their program. And so they're inviting you in to check and make sure that everything they love on paper is you in person. So you're going to want to make sure that you look over both of those documents and make sure that you can answer any questions they may have about those documents. And in addition, if you wrote down a location that you would prefer to be placed in, then make sure you know why you like each one of those areas. That way, if they ask a question about it, you're ready on the spot to answer it. Tip number 3, categorize your questions. Now, you don't have to do this, but it definitely helped me out when I was practicing, because I would take my questions and I would put them into different categories like family, education, goals, etc. And I practiced not only answering each individual question, but I also practiced taking other answers from other questions and tying them in to each other. That way, when I was answering questions, I answered multiple questions at once, and it gave them more time to ask me questions that they didn't know about me instead of hitting every individual question. And it also gave them a very full answer that showed them what kind of person I was. So let's say, for example, they ask a question about your goals. You could answer the one question, and then you, if you practiced enough, can seamlessly tie in more goals that you want to share with the interviewer so that you are a better choice for the program. So this is a really pro tip that you're probably not going to hear from everywhere. So categorize those questions. Tip number 4, practice with others. This is not only going to help you randomize the questions so that you're more able to answer a question on the fly, but also if you ask them to reword the questions, then it's going to train your brain to look for the core of the question instead of looking for a very specific question that you've been practicing. And honestly, this goes incredibly well with the categorizing tip that I have for number 3, because if you know the core of each question, then you'll have a really easy time tying different answers together to give better, more full answers to these questions. And honestly, it's also going to help you up so that if the interviewers ask you a question in a way that you're not expecting, you don't get tripped up as bad because you're already used to somebody else changing the wording or asking it in a slightly different way. So tip number 4 is really important as well. Tip number 5, if you're married, like me, then you're definitely going to want to talk through the entire program with your spouse. You're going to want to know what their goals are for this time period, and you're going to want to know how they feel about the entire program as well. And that's because JET, they really do want this to be an excellent program, not only for the people in Japan that get to experience you, but also for you and your family, because your spouse is a part of that. And so I honestly think that like half of my questions had to do with my spouse in Japan. So you're going to want to make sure that you not only look into everything on your side of it, but also on theirs. Again, they want the best for you and your family, so make sure that you know what those details include. Tip number 6. Prep 2 to 3 questions for your JET interviewees. Basically, when you go into the interview, you're going to be interviewed by 3 separate people. One will be a consulate member or an embassy member, depending on where you're at. The second will be a professional Japanese educator. and the third will be a former JET alumni. And basically, whenever you go into an interview, you want to make sure you give each person eye contact and attention, so make sure you do that. But knowing who these people are may help you in directing your questions to the right person. And so, just make sure of one thing. Don't try to come up with these questions on the spot. I would definitely make sure you have 2 to 3 questions prepped prior to the interview. Tip number 7. If you wrote that you know some Japanese on your application, then just make sure you brush up on it before the interview. And that's because although the Japanese test portion of the interview isn't going to dock you any points, it still gives you bonus points. And those are really, really helpful. So just make sure that you practice that. You don't have to overdo it. Just as long as you didn't lie on your application about how good your Japanese was. So make sure you brush up on that before you get started. Tip number 8, try to remain as calm as you can going into your interview. Now, naturally, you've worked really hard for this, and so there's going to be some nerves that come along with it. And a little bit of nerves can actually be really helpful, but too much nerves can result in paralysis, and you don't want that. So you have to make sure that you're doing what you can to be as confident and calm walking into the process as possible. And the first thing that you should do to accomplish that is remember that they selected you to come in for the interview. They think that you are an awesome candidate for this program. So that should be bolstering your confidence a little bit already. And secondly, you should make sure that you do whatever you have to be confident and calm. For me, I think that when I look sharp, I feel more confident. So here's a picture of me before the interview. I made sure I dressed professionally. I made sure I got a haircut beforehand. It made me pretty confident walking in. And again, if you're like me, when I was driving to the interview, I listened to music that got me pumped. So I was listening to like some Axl F, Crazy Frog, or something like that. And you should do the same. Not to mention, you should also make sure you arrive 30 minutes early. Not only does this help prevent you from being tardy or from being late, it also just gives you an awesome amount of time to calm down. I mean, on the day of my interview, there was actually a blizzard, and that 30 minutes helped me tremendously. But in addition to that, arriving 30 minutes early is going to help you with our next tip, which is tip number 9, talk with others inside of the waiting room. Now, when you arrive, you're going to be placed inside of a separate room with other JET applicants, a JET alumni, and possibly one member of the Japanese consulate or embassy that you're at. And there's a lot of people that believe that when you're inside this room, it's actually a part of the JET interview process. It's not proven, but if it is, then just like I mentioned inside my video, What is the JET Program, which I'll put a card to right up here above, the JET program is interested in people who are going to engage with others that they don't know. And so, when you're inside this room, you can take a really awesome piece of advice from Andrew Carnegie in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and don't be focused on yourself. Instead, focus on others. This is a huge boost in emotional intelligence because it just shows that, first off, you're not self-absorbed. Instead, you're focusing on others, it shows you're self-aware, and it also means that you're really good at engaging in conversations because you're not talking about yourself the whole time. Instead, you're getting other people to talk with you. You're showing interest in what their interests are. You're interested in what their goals are. And that gets people talking because everyone likes to talk about their goals. So, that extra 30 minutes that you show up early, that's really going to help you shine in this area, and it also gives you time to calm down. So show up 30 minutes early, talk with the other guests, and also make sure that you focus on their goals and not your own. Don't worry, they'll ask you about yours. You'll have your time to share. And finally, tip number 10, if you're still feeling uneasy, or maybe you're not in the interview portion of the JET application process, then why not check out some of our other videos? I try to make sure that I include tips in every video about the JET program, and I also try to make sure that I include a few tips that are multiple use tips, like they can be used in different portions of the application process. For example, in my What is the JET Program video that I mentioned earlier, I talk about what the core of the JET program is, and trying to use those core elements of the JET program and tying them into questions, maybe for a JET interview, would be really, really good on your part. So if you want to check those out, First off, the one that I mentioned earlier is inside this little dot up here. You just have to click that, and it's a card that I put up, so you can check that out. And I also have all of my JET videos for the application process in the description. So, if you like this video, or you found it informative, please remember to like and subscribe so that we can continue to give you great content. And also, if you have any other questions about any part of the JET application process, just make sure you put it in a comment below. I try to make sure I check those all the time. And finally, if you know somebody else applying for the JET program, I know it's competitive, but honestly, don't be stingy. Please make sure you share these videos with them if you think it'll be helpful for them. If you don't think it'll be helpful, don't worry about it. But honestly, we all love Japan, and we want them to experience the best ambassadors possible because of what the goals of this program are. And so, just make sure you're sharing it so that we can make sure we send the best people over that we possibly can. Having said that, thank you so much for watching this video. I wish you the best of luck, and ganbatte. Good luck. Do your best. I'll see you later. Dyce Quirk out.